You're telling me how you closed over $5,000 worth of new business in just the first month of learning cold email, right? This is something
Yeah.
you had no experience with before. You came into some of our trainings and programs, you signed up for ListKit, and all of a sudden you have $5,000 in new business. What's going on, guys? Andre Hagel Jr. here from ListKit and Client Ascension, here with a really good friend of mine, Kylo. What's going on, brother?
How you doing, brother? How you doing? Good to see you.
Dude, this is a great opportunity for us to catch up, and it's also a good opportunity for us to highlight what you've been doing behind the scenes using cold email. And so we were talking just the other week, and you're telling me how you closed over $5,000 worth of new business in just the first month of learning cold email, right? This is something
Yeah.
you had no experience with before. You came into some of our trainings and programs, you signed up for ListKit, and all of a sudden you have $5,000 in new business. So that's what we're going to unpack here today. But just to start us off, yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and like what do you sell?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously good friend of you and the boys. So I've followed what you guys have done for quite a bit, but I've never really dipped my toe into cold email in terms of like that it's this big thing that it is. So it was interesting where about a month ago I work at mainly at Snack Prompt, which is an AI company. We have a newsletter, 250,000 subscribers. We are in the process of building out like a new end-to-end AI platform that's based a lot for agencies. So we're very excited about that. But for right now, the main focus has really been kind of just adding sponsors to the newsletter. And one of the things there was obviously cold email that's been used there. And I really had no prior experience, kind of hopped in. I'd attended Client Ascension last year. So as a part of that was cold email mastery, but like I'd never really kind of paid attention to it until now when I was like, okay, let me rip some cold email campaigns. Let's see what we could do. So I popped in literally, I think my score is like 38% progress, but like the lectures and the different setup of like the structure of it. Okay, now list building, messaging, like inbox management, like everything was so bite-sized and like informational where I literally just scrolled the headlines and I was like, oh, I need to know this. I need to know this. And like one of the things on our end, which I know you guys aren't too fond of, but we had already instituted Instantly as a sending tool within our like ecosystem in a sense. So I didn't want to go and kind of disrupt too much. I was more like, let's see what we can do kind of with what we have. So I just piecemealed the different components I needed together. And then I started sending. And then that's where we were going after newer companies and a lot of those weren't in Instantly. So I got ListKit and then I started like comparing like line by line in terms of like, okay, how many contacts does this company have here? How many contacts here? And I kept seeing like companies that weren't in Instantly or they only had a few. As soon as I put them in ListKit, it just bombarded with contacts and like it's been really good. And we've been firing off emails like crazy.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, one of the big selling points of ListKit is just how often we refresh the database. And yeah, like that's feedback we hear all the time is like people use Apollo and Zoom Info and Seamless and Instantly and all the other competitors and they'll compare their search results from ListKit with what they're seeing and getting from other databases and it's almost every time they come back with more contacts. And contacts that didn't exist in other databases. Like you could pull a list from Apollo or Instantly and find the same contacts in both databases. There's not really any newness from
Mm-hmm.
switching and migrating over. But with ListKit, at least from customer feedback and our own experience using and building the tool, that's one of the points of focus. Because yeah, with cold email, it's like if everyone's reaching out to the same leads, what's going to happen, right? It's like everyone's
Yeah.
the same people. Eventually, the messages are going to drown out, and you're not going to see really too much success. But if you're marketing the people that are not being found in other databases, the more common database tools, then it's really like a blue ocean
Yeah.
in the industry of cold email. So that's really awesome, bro.
And I've definitely seen also higher open rates and like I'm seeing more kind of higher open rates and more engagement on the campaigns that I'm running with ListKit as being like the main list builder compared to the Instantly ones. So there's been a lot more hyper focus on that end. And now that it's been really, I'd say like the last couple of weeks, we've been really narrowing in and I've been like moving more and more towards ListKit as the primary one. So I'm really excited to see kind of as the stats keep growing and as we start going in the pipeline because like one of the funniest things was the stupid detective emoji. Like when I was at Client Ascension last year, like at the event, and like everyone was wearing it, I didn't get it. And I was like, this is stupid. And then now that like it's been a month and like given that that's at the end of the automation or the sequence, I get so many responses on that email, and I always send them to Christian. I'm like, dude, this is a joke. Like, how does this work? Like, this is so stupid.
It's awesome. Yeah, that's one of our
Yeah.
super fast strategies for people listening in. Just following up with the detective emoji and nothing else. It's literally like sending a detective out to be like, "Yo, where are you? You haven't
Yeah.
responded to my email." So it works every time. Yeah, it's awesome. But one thing you pointed out about like the higher open rates is another thing for people that don't know about ListKit and the way it works is the leads are triple verified. And so if you get a lead from Instantly or Apollo, that email has been sitting in the database for a while now. With ListKit, the email, yes, it might be sitting there for a while, but we don't give you that email. We give you that email after putting it through in real time. Once you click the redeem credits button, a triple verification process. So every email on your list is in real time updated and validated. And so you know when you send it that email, it's fresh, it's deliverable. And so yeah, people are opening at a higher rate because they're not stale, right? And so freshness of the database is like such a common theme that we talk about here at ListKit, and you see it in the results, right? So one thing I want to go into real quick is just like why cold email. So I know like with your background as well, you did some work with Valuetainment and some of these bigger entrepreneurs. Now you're working with Snack Prompt. Like these are companies that have massive email lists, massive marketing budgets. They spend tons of money on ads. Why did cold email come into the fold to you? Like what
Yeah,
was it
absolutely.
about cold email?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. So I think for us, kind of one of the outbound strategies we found was basically just assembling lists of companies that do newsletter sponsors with other big newsletters, whether it be like Morning Brew, The Hustle, kind of whatever newsletters there are. We kind of took the approach of like, hey, this is one segment of the audience that we can go after because they're doing newsletters and they're also familiar with the game, so you don't have to sell them on, hey, run sponsorships or advertising, but with newsletters, because it's a very different medium compared to like a cost per click, cost per lead, CPMs with Facebook, Google, and stuff like that. So we kind of looked at it and saw that as like, hey, these are people who are already allocating their budgets. Like, how about we get a piece of the pie, right? That was one of the components in terms of doing outreach, where we saw from a scale standpoint, like nothing could really match cold email. And specifically in terms of like you build a list, you run it in a sequence, and then like you're relatively hands off, right? So if I have 2 or 3 VAs kind of building lists, putting some stuff together, at that point you can rip, like you can hit 500, 600, 1,000 emails a day with relatively minimal effort, and then from there you're just scheduling calls, or most of the people have not even needed calls. They just go straight to like, hey, we're interested, because like I said, their understanding of newsletters in terms of the cost per leads or the cost per clicks and kind of what those conversion rates are, then they're good with it. And then the other component too is we're looking for companies in the AI tech space. So like the alternative would be, I guess, cold outreach in terms of social media and DMs and stuff like that. But that's also a place where, I mean, we get bombarded with
Yeah.
DMs and messages and stuff like that. So I think that email is ultimately still the world's biggest communication method. And that's not really going to go anywhere as much as people like to hate on it or anything like that. So for us at scale, email was really the only like immediate solution to really go after. And that's kind of what we prioritized. And so far it's been really working out well.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Especially with these newer companies, like you're saying, and again, like going back to like a selling point about ListKit is like just being able to be one of the first to uncover that company's
Hmm.
contact information and first in their
Yeah.
inbox, right? We're releasing a really cool feature this week, tomorrow actually, called Intent Data, which is
Hmm.
a feature that a lot of our competitors have. But again, a big selling point about our intent data compared to everyone else's is we're updating records every day, right? Because if someone
Yeah.
is searching for something today, you don't want to then have them in your database a month later because the intent is not as strong as it was when they were originally searching for the thing. They might have already found the solution or the person they were hiring or whatever it was that their intent was for. So
Absolutely. There's one other thing that I noticed using both databases that I really liked about ListKit is the feature of like how many employees per company do you want to set? Because ultimately what I've been doing is I've exported lists, and then like depending on, like the challenge is sometimes you find a company like Spotify where they have like thousands of
yeah,
employees, right? And then there's other times where you find a startup where there's 4 of them, right? And then if you go strictly based on like their leadership, like titles and stuff like that, sometimes the overlap basically cuts people out. And then what I saw was when I'm exporting people, or like a certain list of domains or stuff like that, then it like cuts out some of the domains where they don't make it in the export. So basically what I had to do was I had to like manually sort it and instantly of like, okay, companies that are below 10 people, like just export the whole thing. Like don't even go to like leadership position titles. Like I don't care about that. Like I want to talk to all of them. But then the ones that were above 10 or like typically above 100 or something crazy like that, then I had to literally export it. I'd have to put it into ChatGPT with a prompt, give it a command to basically like then manually filter out the ones I wanted to talk to. And then like you have to verify that like, okay, I'd literally have to go back and forth with ChatGPT and be like, to confirm what changes have you done to this CSV? And then I'm like, okay, bro, like you took 3 companies aren't even here. So like it became this whole manual process. But when we were in ListKit, you literally just hit the, hey, I want 10 people, like, or I want 15 people
Yeah,
or whatever. And then it was so easy. Like I even had the VA reach out to me and he's like, am I doing this wrong? Like this is too simple.
bro, that's it. It's like data freshness and then also simplicity, right? Because like
Absolutely.
I think a huge bottleneck for salespeople and just anyone interested in doing cold email is they spend all the time building the list rather
Mhm.
than hitting the list. And it's like,
Yeah.
who's going to win in a race or just in a competition between sales team is like someone that's hitting the list all day or someone that's building the list all day, right? It's like
Absolutely.
sharpening your axe or like hit or using your axe, right? It's like
Yep.
people are sitting around waiting, building things instead of actually doing outreach and hitting the inboxes. And so a huge selling point of ListKit is like you go in and then you get out. It's like you're not spending all day in this tool like you are
Mhm.
with some of these other competitors. And that's
Yeah.
by design. We want you in and out. We want you prospecting, getting results, and coming back for more. And so I love to hear like a lot of these, bigger themes that we've really wanted to push through with what we're building, like validated and see that, we're hitting some of these things. So one of the other questions I had for you, bro, is like, could you just break down for the audience like what the cold email sales process looks like? Like when you say $5,000 in new business from cold email, it's like, yeah, like you're sending an email, someone says they're interested, but like what happens from there and what have you seen to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that again, and I'm sure there's other people who do it way more advanced than us, but we kind of started simple of like we send out emails and then from there you judge it into okay, you get a response. Then it's a is it a positive or negative or like out of office, which is the one that always hits me. But then from there you kind of go back and forth. Like in our case, the pitch is basically like, hey, I noticed you are doing sponsors on XYZ newsletter. Are you interested in being in front of our audience? Right? We have a tech slash AI audience. Like, let me know if you're interested in more information. From there, they respond yes. Then I basically send over our media kit and also kind of some stats on the open rates, click through rates, kind of what ad placements cost and stuff like that. So I'll send that to them. And then from there, there's a like, I'd almost say 50-50 chance that they might want to do a sales call in order to get more information, which is kind of at that point, you're also just reiterating the same information and then going over if they have any questions. Or in some cases, they're ready to buy and they're like, hey, your numbers look good in terms of what we normally do. It's on industry average, kind of whatever in terms of the cost per clicks, cost per leads, and like the CPMs. So at that point, they're like, hey, we're ready to roll. And then from there, on our end, it's basically confirming payment, locking in a date of when they want to run the promotion, and then gathering assets in terms of creatives or copy or kind of anything they have on that end. And then on our end, internally, we just add that to the calendar. And then once the day comes out, or like the day before, because it's a daily newsletter Monday through Friday, then you basically just slide it into the sponsorship slot, and then it goes from there.
Dude, that's such a killer offer too because of like how low commitment it is in a way and like how
Yeah.
turnaround is, right? Because like I think a big issue with a lot of people's offers, it's like it sounds nice and like it sounds cool and ritzy, but like the results aren't there right away. Like there's a 3 month warm up process and then a lot of testing. But like with you guys, it's like we'll slot you into the newsletter as a sponsor, and right away, like if you have good positioning, you're gonna see an impact, right? You're gonna see a spike in volume
Yeah.
or else.
And right now, like our newsletter is usually booked like 2 weeks out ish. So that allows for the sales process in terms of when we do connect with someone, like you go back and forth, maybe 2 or 3 emails, and then it's like, hey, we have maybe something end of next week or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So then the cycle of everything kind of once it starts is pretty good. And then also like one of the things that I noticed, which surprised me, but I guess it just goes to show like with people, but in terms of the sequences that we'd send out, like the importance of having like, I think it's like 5, 6, 7 emails in the sequence, like spaced out, because a lot of the responses I see are basically sequences that started like a month ago or 3 weeks ago, where it's like they answer on follow-up 9. And like there's one funny story because I followed Christian's script that was in the video, and then I see this one response where basically like somebody in the chain had forwarded the email, like towards the end, it's like, who's the best person to talk to? And then they had forwarded to that person. And then on the copy, it said, it basically was like, I guess it was in Russian, but it basically said, hey, like this is a cold email, clearly, but it's a really good email. So normally I don't respond, but I figured I'd send this to you. And I saw that, it just cracked me up. So I was like, okay, this, I guess this works. Like this is
Yeah,
good stuff. So they then basically just responded to that chain and then like added me on there. So it was funny that I could see this,
that's
but
awesome.
I remember seeing that and I was like, out of curiosity, like, okay, copy paste, go to ChatGPT, like translate this for me. And when I saw it, I was like, dude, this is too funny. Like obviously you guys know what you're doing, and if you just try to basically copy and adjust to whatever you need to, then you're good on that end. So like for me, there was zero innovation. It was just like, okay, he says opening line is this. Okay, let me adjust it to what I have.
Yeah,
Middle, this, right? 3 days later, 4 days later, 3 days later, 4 days later, 4 days later. Like this is the sequence. Keep it simple and just start sending, and you'll see results.
yeah, it's really as simple as plug in your ICP or your target market, plug in your offer, and then just have sales conversations. Meaning,
Hmm.
like when someone responds to the email, have the conversation from there, right? Which you're
Absolutely.
doing every day already if you're running a business. So,
Yeah.
real quick, just for the audience, you've mentioned a couple of products, and one thing about us is we have like so many different products, and it gets confusing for people. But the ones Kai's mentioning is Cold Email Mastery, which is
Yep.
our 497 a year program. It's just going over how to send cold emails. And
Hmm.
then ListKit.io, which is our software. It's a B2B leads database. It's where you actually can get the emails to send your campaigns to. One of the last questions I have for you, though, Kai, is like marketing to me is like math, right? Like I know we're running ad campaigns right now for a pretty solid offer, and the cost per acquisition is like $1,000 for a
Hmm.
$1,500 offer. And, like, that's really good in today's age with just, like, how expensive ads have become. Like, to see a 1.5, 2x ROAS on a done for you agency service is pretty good, at least from what, our friends in the industry are telling us. So similar to that with cold email, it's like, okay, if I can get a client from every 10,000 leads that I get from ListKit for $300, like I'm doing a lot better than I'd be doing through paid ads. And so now the question becomes like, what does the math look like for you guys? How are you determining whether or not your campaigns are successful? And then from there, what is your plan to scale?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a phenomenal question. So, in terms of how we determine it, and that's one of the things we're still kind of working on and seeing with the numbers. I know that initially when I started the setup, I turned like some of the tracking off. So, like the first couple of weeks, I wasn't like seeing fully the open rates and like response rates and stuff like that. But for us right now, we've kind of divided it into two kind of main ways of going after sponsors. Like one is through people who are already doing newsletter subscriptions, and then the other one is kind of going after smaller AI companies that are often like featured on Product Hunt, TechCrunch, stuff like that. So initially now it's kind of like just send, get up to a good volume. Today we're about, I'd say, between 700 and 900 emails a day. So like volume is starting to kind of get cranking. And then from there, it's getting a solid understanding of like the sales process in terms of, hey, the sales were attributed to these campaigns, and this was a campaign that was started X amount of time ago. Like that'll kind of be like the first phase of seeing where it's at. And then from there, like you said too, it's cost efficient in terms of like, okay, you max out your credits, then you just upgrade a little bit more, and then you have like this whole, suddenly you have like room for twice as much. Like that's where I think organic content and cold email work in that way, where like for a little bit more effort you can get a lot more on the upside, versus like with ads it's like dollar in dollar out. But like as soon
Yeah.
as it stops, like the sequence is done. And that really goes to like the sequence of like where you can email people, and then you have in a 7 email sequence, and then like a month later literally you could get a response, and it's like, wow, okay, I had no idea. But it has that long tail effect. So right
Yeah.
now it's just a matter of kind of getting the numbers at a comprehensive place, and then starting to see like, okay, 10,000 equals this, equals this, equals this. And that's really where we're at right now.
Yeah, you have to give it time, like you said, because one of the cool things about cold email is it over time builds a lot of pipeline value. And I always said,
Mm-hmm.
and you probably heard this in some of the videos in cold email mastery, but like what goes into a successful cold email campaign is really like saying the right thing to the right person, just like with any like marketing campaign in general. But what's really important about cold email is timing, right? Because like if your email delivers at a time where maybe that person's out of office, like you mentioned, or maybe they're just having a really busy day at work and like a pitch about your specific service is like the least of their worries right now. Like just say
Yep.
your email got to them at the wrong time. Like you have to get timing right as much as you have to get messaging and targeting right. And so in order to do that, you can't predict when the best time to email this person is, but you can give yourself the most amount of chances to get the timing right, which is why we have the sequence of multiple follow-ups. And it's why you see a lot of responses to the detective emoji, because most people, the mistake they make with follow-ups in emails, they say the same thing over and over and over again. But people don't want to read a whole email thread with multiple different messages all saying the same thing. And so by sending the detective emoji, you're basically just saying, hey, pointing to the message above, did you see that one? They go back and they read one email now instead of four or five, and they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And so you just got to give yourself as many chances as possible. But yeah, dude, I love the sound of all of that. I'm excited to see how this continues to scale for you guys. And I know you have some other exciting offers that you'll be applying this to. But last thing for our audience, where can they find you and follow you and learn more about getting either placed on your newsletter or just the work that you're doing with Snack Prompt? You just have a lot of exciting things going on that I know, in addition to the cold email side of things, we just talked about. Our audience would love to know more.
Absolutely, absolutely. They could get a hold of me on either Twitter or Instagram, Kai Lodee, Lodee, so two E's. And then obviously Snack Prompt, we have a newsletter called The Daily Bite, and snackprompt.com is kind of where that can be found on that end.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Kai. Appreciate you, bro. Excited to see you using
Absolutely,
cold
brother.
successfully after all this time, and we'll keep in touch to see how it continues to scale.
Perfect. You have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Peace, bro.
Bye.
Thank you.